we have some crazy transits coming up this spring, and I really want to talk about it because, like, if you don't know about it and you're into astrology, you need to know about it. Pretty much the major astrological events of the year are just like boom, 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 like just happening in spring. Starting technically, I guess, in Pisces season when we have Saturn enter Pisces, but I wanted to kind of go through them one at a time and talk about what's going on, what's going to happen. Our first transit kind of bringing us into this new season, but really this era of a lot of things changing really quick, is our Saturn entering Pisces transit, and this is happening on March 7th. And the interesting thing about this transit is that even though Saturn is very slow moving, you know, Saturn goes, Saturn retrogrades, very slow, very, very slow. Saturn enters Pisces and it retrogrades at some point, and it goes all the way back to 0 degrees, but it never re-enters Aquarius. So Saturn is like going into Pisces like for the long haul. It's going to stay there. And so this is a huge transit because we're done with almost 6 years of Saturn being in its own sign, right? In its own signs. It likes to be in Aquarius. It likes to be in Capricorn. It's been moving through places where Saturn feels comfortable. So the planet Saturn has to do with restrictions, boundaries. It's also societal structures. It's manifestation. It's a lot of things, but really this energy is shifting us from basically restructuring the structures, Saturn in a Saturn sign, to restructuring the almost intangible aspects of life. I actually filmed 2 long YouTube videos on Pluto and Aquarius and Saturn entering Pisces today. Saturn is going into the sign that doesn't, gosh, I have Pluto in Pisces, so I don't mean this in a bad way. But Saturn is technically going into the sign that's not about anything. If you think about it, Pisces is the most, by definition, intangible sign. And so the planet of manifestation and tangible things and concepts is going into the intangible. And so basically, Saturn is kind of like excavating our BS, our stuff. It's basically bringing us into a place where the kind of focus in the direction of things shifts. Instead of us being so kind of controlling socially with each other and so focused on this is how it should be, status, social media. Let me make sure I'm doing good at this. Let me make sure I'm doing good at this. Let me make sure I have a group, right? Very group mentality, trying to fit yourself. Saturn in Aquarius was fitting the self into your concept of where you want to be in the world around you. Very externalized, right? It's a positive polarity sign. This is shifting focus. Oh, there she is. Hi, Minnie. This is shifting focus into the inner world. There's several key themes that are really important with this transit, but some of the major ones are inner world beliefs, but also feeling the feelings. There is a lot of avoidance around dealing with the stuff, but even dealing with the stuff that's happened in the world the past several years. It's hard stuff. It's hard stuff to talk about. And Pluto or Saturn in Aquarius just had us going oh, it's okay. We're all fine. We're fine. And I really see Saturn in Pisces is bringing up the grief, basically. Bringing up the, oh my gosh, I am not feeling good. Bringing up the tears. I'm kind of seeing this transit energetically as we've all, as a protective mechanism, kind of built a cage of ice around the heart, right? We're trying to protect ourselves. It's painful to have an emotional relationship with life right now. For anybody. In fact, why would you want to do that? I mean, you can make a case for that. And so this Saturn in Pisces is almost about things triggering the melting of the ice, and we're starting to feel. And the grief is coming up, the sadness is coming up, the pain is coming up, but it's coming up to move out. It's coming up to be released. But to anyone who's in a pattern, reasonably so, I get why you get there, but in a pattern of avoiding the emotions, Saturn may test you by kind of, poking at you until something gets you to cry. That sounds so dramatic, but seriously, there's something about getting real about the inner emotions, because the energy of Pisces, not only everybody's Pisces are escapist, Pisces are trying to run away. Yes, Pisces as a sign has escapist tendencies, but the part that's not mentioned often is that it's very easy for most people, especially those without strong Pisces in their chart, to escape Pisces. Because it's not tangible, it's very easy to like be like, oh, you know, I'm swimming in this pool of the collective pain of people and of the struggles of existing and no one knows why. And that sucks, but it's okay, I'll focus on something else. Saturn in Pisces is bringing a reality check to that, a reality check to the emotional experience of life. So we're kind of having to look at it, but not really by choice. It's not like, oh, I think I'll feel my feelings. You know, let me grab some tea and feel my feelings. It's not cute. It's like ugly tears, you know? I mean, I'll share like this perfect Saturn and Pisces thing. It hasn't even happened yet, but like the other day, I think I was having a Pisces moment of some sort. And I was driving my car, and for some reason, you know, I'm not usually like this, but for some reason, this stop sign just like had me in my feels. I don't know what happened, but I just started crying because of this stop sign. And it wasn't anything in specific about the stop sign. Maybe it was. And I still to this day don't know why I was crying, but the point is that's the Saturn and Pisces energy. If there's something there that needs to be melted and felt, it's going to come to the surface. And we have been in these very like hyper productivity, hyper intellectual, hyper accomplishment driven, and very, very status driven transits too. I will say it's been very much like I'm the boss, I'm killing it in life. And Saturn and Pisces might have us all looking around and being like, what is success? Because all these people who are successful, not all of them, many of them seem to actually be suffering. And redefining the vision of success to relate more to the inner world than the external world. That's the Saturn and Pisces transit. I do find it interesting that Saturn's entering Pisces and the Sun and Mercury will both be there. Neptune's going to be there. Saturn is basically like, I love this about Saturn. Personally, I really personify the planets. I'm always like, when they're transiting, I'm like, oh, that's funny. Like, you thought you should do that. Because, I don't know, it just feels so divinely orchestrated. I just feel like they all have personalities. And I think the more charts you look at, the more that like comes true. But anyways, I think it's so awesome that Saturn's like, okay, yeah, I'll leave behind my signs. I'll come right into Pisces and I won't leave. And Neptune will be there ruling me the entire time. Like, kind of badass, honestly. You know, like if you're into astrology, do you have those times when like things are really hectic, maybe astrologically, but then you have people who don't know astrology coming to you and they're like, what's going on with the stars? Everything's crazy. And you're like, yeah, I know. That's kind of what's coming with this like wall of like all this Saturn into Pisces. And it's beautiful because I think there's a lot of redefining what not just success looks like, but also beauty standards. I think there's a lot of themes around how we relate with old age, because that does remind us, you could say in some ways, of the dying process, but how we're so averse to it societally, not individually, but how that's so deeply ingrained to like avoid that. Pisces is old age. Pisces is where things fall apart at the end, you know? It's not just like a clean transition. Aquarius wants it to be, oh, we're done. Story's over. Pisces is like everything unravels and it's just chaos. And then the story ends. And then you go into sleep. And it's like this part of life that we all experience at different times, but old age is really a perfect kind of symbolism of it. I talked about this in the YouTube video I filmed today quite a bit, but the place where things fall apart is so ugly and unattractive, and I think our very clean, productive, image-driven world avoids it like at all costs. You know, we don't want the mess. But the mess is coming to us, and that's okay. Saturn is bringing us to that. And I'm not saying you're going to be a mess. Maybe you will. I probably will be. But if you are, it's not about, oh God, make the mess stop. That's so Aquarius. That's Saturn Aquarius. Make the mess stop. Let's fix it. It's about how you relate to things falling apart. What do you do when you realize, Pisces, I have no control? Saturn in Pisces is teaching us what real unconditional love looks like. Spiritual teachers who focus on the love and light concept and qualities to the point of actually rejecting other people's realities of like, oh, you must not be on my wavelength. And I'm not being facetious right now. I'm sure you've come across these people. I've found myself in these communities for many years of my life. And when it comes down to rejecting other people's truth and choosing to look away, when people are suffering because like they don't get it and you do. That is spiritual bypassing, but that's also just fake. That's just fake. And how can you truly be unconditionally loving if you can't hold space for the fact that half, 50-50, yin-yang, half of the stuff of life sucks? If you can't accept that reality and also love that, is that unconditional love? Well, it's kind of easy to be like, no, that's not unconditional love. Saturn in Pisces is also bringing that up to the surface of like, in which ways have we run away so hard from reality into a higher plane of existence that we've lost touch with either one, because you can't have one without the other. You know, if we were supposed to just be these angelic beings, like these energetic, like cute things flying around, like, you know, time traveling, wherever, different planets, guess what? We'd be there. But we're human, and we're supposed to be human. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But Saturn in Pisces is bringing up the part of us, but also the people who really preach a message of escape the human, fix the human side of yourself, into Pisces, accept, love, unconditional love. Think about the ocean. That's the best kind of way to conceptualize this too, is to think about structures, groundedness, reality, boundaries, lessons. We're getting real about the ocean and being like the ocean, which really means accepting everything. The ocean doesn't say, okay, yeah, this piece of trash can be in the ocean, that's fine, you stay out there. The ocean doesn't say this fish, but not that one. The ocean rejects nothing. In fact, all water eventually ends up there. And how beautiful that the ocean, that this Neptunian ocean that is most of our planet, can accept so wholeheartedly. And don't we have something to learn from that? Same with animals. I think that's a big one too. Like a collective recognition of, oh my gosh, animals have something to teach us. Learning from the earth, and it doesn't have to be going on crazy psychedelic spiritual journeys and getting out of the body. We're actually trying to get back in. We've just had Saturn in Capricorn and Aquarius. We've had plenty of time to get in our head and rationalize everything. Now it's about, okay, how do I feel about this? And if the feelings come up, it's okay. If you realize that beliefs that you've had, that people, that groups you've associated with actually have nothing to do with who you really are, that's terrifying, and I validate that. I'm here with you. Awful feeling. However, brave of you to recognize that, because now is the time to make that change. You don't have to do that. You don't have to be there with people who want to tell you what to think. And another thing I'll say on this, because kind of with the whole false teachers, false prophets thing, which, I don't know, it's a topic that's close to my heart. Maybe someday I'll be less 8th house private person, but I've had a lot of direct experience with that energy in my life. And the way it happens, like on paper, you're like, oh, I would never listen to someone who's just like preaching that they're the only one who knows things. But the way that this happens is kind of this slow, it's a manipulation. And the art of persuasion is something that has gotten way too entangled with both spirituality and religion for a long time. And we're looking at that now. And so because Saturn is entering Pisces, people who are wanting like spiritual power of some sort and need it from other people, which by the way, that's not real spiritual power at all. But people who want that, who need to be validated and have someone kind of get their control, guess what? Saturn and Pisces, they want it more. So I'm not fear-mongering, but please, like, check in with what you're taking in. What, even like TV shows, news sources, what media are you consuming? Neptune, which is in Pisces, ruling Pisces. Neptune, Pisces is movies, it's media, but media is technically a story, it's a delusion of some sort. There's always manipulation when something is relayed versus what actually happened. It's always a perspective involved. So just be conscious, mindful of what you're taking in. And guess what? It's as simple. You get to decide who you listen to. You get to decide. Even if like your friends, your family are like, oh, I really like this person and I believe everything they say. If you watch that person, you get a bad feeling from them, that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know. Saturn, get real with your intuition. You know better than anyone else what your truth is, and even if it looks different than other people's, awesome. Go do a solo Pisces Saturn transit and you're probably coming out like enlightened. I'm kind of kidding, but I like that 5D to 3D and the both coming together and the fact that there doesn't have to be separation. But there can't be rejecting of either. So it's going to be an interesting transit, and we got a Pisces pileup when Saturn enters Pisces. So the second half of Pisces season, going to be kind of a wild ride. If you feel sad, if you feel alone, maybe I'll go live more, but if you feel alone during this transit, already I want to tell you you're not alone. And also, taking that time by yourself is the medicine. Not isolating completely, but kind of pulling back and being like, why do I feel alone? Because you might see things like, oh my gosh, because the people in my life I feel alone with even if I'm with them. So I always feel alone. I just didn't realize that. Kind of profound stuff, but it's realizations that need to happen. And ultimately, even though this sounds like such a heavy, like kind of dark energy, Saturn plus Pisces, a little bit heavy, a little bit dark. We've got other stuff going on. I'll get to that. So don't worry, but there's nothing wrong with dark. Dark isn't evil. Dark isn't bad or wrong. Dark is just the opposite of light. How do you get one without the other? No such thing as one without the other. And this is taking us into our depths instead of like, oh, airy-fairy. Because Saturn is like, no, get real with that Pisces stuff. You can't just dissociate and float off into whatever. Get real. What's happening? What do you feel? What's in the world? What are you experiencing? And so, can you be brave enough to move through life while the world is in chaos and pain with an open heart? Personally, I think that's like the bravest thing you can do, to allow yourself to have an emotional relationship with life. Instead, we got Pluto entering Aquarius, ruled by a Saturn in Pisces, and a Uranus in Taurus. Pluto entering Aquarius is a shift from structures, hierarchy, authority, you could say government power, systems, right? To the intellect and sense of individuality of every single person. This is a massive one. There's so much here, but really, we are moving from, and I know everyone's like, based on the past few years, how can you call that predictable? It's not predictable. We had the great conjunction in Capricorn, Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. That shook things up in the world, but we're really moving into the unpredictable because Uranus is the planet you cannot predict. I'm going to go back into Capricorn in June, but then when it moves back into Aquarius, technically speaking, Pluto moves through a sign for 20 years. So 20 years. It's a big one. And also the babies that were about to be born, like after, well, specifically after next year when Pluto's just solid in Aquarius. But these Pluto and Aquarius babies, I'm so excited to see like who they're going to be. I don't know. I feel like I already like look up to them. Genius, intellectual, individualistic, but also societally functioning Pluto. That's all about progress. But, okay, progress. We have to stop there because we're seeing a lot around society, structure, progress. Uranus is also technology. Aquarius is technology. It's the internet, social media. Did you ever do this when you were little? You start rolling down the hill and then you keep going fast and then you're like, oh, I don't like this anymore. There is an energy of like, how careful are we really being with technology? There are so many specific points I could go into with that, but the way that technology, Aquarius, has come to define the individual self, Aquarius, but also ruled by Uranus now in Taurus, and self-worth, how much of how you perceive yourself is defined by the internet? Most of us probably don't want to think about it. I mean, I'm kind of like, ooh, I'll think about that one later. Yes. Aquarius is not bad energy. No. Kind of the essence, though, is that when Pluto moves into a sign, I feel like, thank you for saying that, this is important. When Pluto moves into a sign, it's not just like, oh, we have a lot of Aquarius. Pluto aims to destroy. Pluto comes in to break down and show us the shadows of that sign and that energy in the world. And so Pluto in Aquarius is kind of destroying, it's really unearthing the underbelly of Aquarian energy. And so just like the South Node, personally I lean more towards negativity when reading Pluto transits just because of the fact that By design, it's pulling up shadows. It's literally like a magnet for like, oh, this is the stuff we need to look at. I mean, it's Pluto, Hades, the underworld. What's the underworld of Aquarius? It actually circles back to Saturn having just moved out of Aquarius and talking about how hyper-intellectualism is a very easy way to accidentally or on purpose kind of forego compassion. Because if you can look at things from a place of like, well, this makes sense logically, it's very easy to keep doing that until you're like, well, logically, I don't really, your problems are yours, mine are mine. And again, I'm not coming after Aquarius people. This is the shadows of the sign as a collective functioning based on everything we've just been through. I never really heard much about conspiracy theories before Pluto was in Capricorn. Perfect example. Because they're all like, who really knows? What are the secrets we're not being told by the higher-ups, whoever they are? By the people who know about aliens but won't tell us, whatever it is, Conspiracy theories are not where I'm going to go with this. I've never really heard, they weren't like common, like kind of mainstream before Pluto went into Capricorn. Then everybody was addicted to like seeing the power structures and just like getting a deeper look. And so even though some of them were baseless and ungrounded, whereas others are more like, yeah, I don't know. There's something to that. Whatever it be, the focus shifted to where is the power really being held? I want to know. And so people went down the rabbit hole. This is saying, in what ways do, instead of government hierarchy structures, in what ways do people control people? In what ways does society check each other so much that there's less freedom? Because Aquarius is also the sign of freedom. But it's a paradoxical sign. It's a trip of a sign. I've been trying to talk more about Aquarius as a sign because it's like, obviously, of course it's misunderstood. It's like, it's very hard to fully grasp. And even when you do, it's easy to lose because it's a trip of energy, Saturn and Uranus. But the paradox is that when people are so free to express themselves, then there becomes social, subliminal, like kind of encouraging towards certain perspectives versus others, as well as like with internet, not to mention echo chambers that come up when algorithms exist, basically. And you kind of get into this spiral of like, oh, this is like my space. And yes, that's great to connect with like-minded people, but at what point is that actually taking you from the collective? Which is interesting because the internet technically served to create a global network that never before existed. So simultaneously being more connected than ever and more disconnected than ever. And what does that do to the human psyche? More so, Uranus and Taurus, we all know this one, it's been there a while. North Node is in Taurus too, and it enters Aquarius. What does it do to the human body and the mind-body connection, mind-body-spirit? What does it do to Taurus, the ability to sit still and be silent? I mean, I think a lot of us have struggled with that. And it's almost like you have to fight to be able to maintain an ability to do that because things are working kind of counteractively in the brain. And with all this technology, this Taurus energy is kind of under attack. I'm really feeling for the sign of Taurus right now. Taurus people, you've got Pluto transiting 8th house in Pisces could mean death, but it also actually could relate to finances, business. There's a lot of things with that one. This Taurus energy is really like the body. How do I feel? The sensory perceptions, the gut feelings. There's a lot kind of like at odds with the gut feelings. Because this intellectual energy takes you out of the body, takes you out of feeling. And it's so interesting because talk about feeling the self, like, oh, I feel like I'm in my body right now. And can you still do that? Saturn's in Pisces now. It's co-ruling this Pluto who just entered Aquarius. Can you feel your feet, head to toes? Do you have are you aware of yourself? And if not, I'm not blaming you. Most of us aren't anymore. But that's the thing is it's like, whoa, this is the most primal thing ever, right? Taurus is the second sign. After consciousness comes senses and body. But we've almost lost that. And what does that mean? And in what ways have we lost self-compassion in addition to compassion for others? And it's very, very interesting because I think we got to keep an eye on technology and where those developments are going. I also think that there's beautiful things that are going to come from this because there is a lot more freedom. I really think we're going to see a shift away from massive, like, celebrities and, like, figures that just have always been, like, the people that you see on TV or on the news, into more people having a say in what they want to listen to and who they want to speak on and who they want to, and more power in the hands of individuals, less curation, but at the same time, more power in the hands of individuals. Well, depending on your perception of human nature, is that a good thing? You can't say it's good or bad. There's really no, it's not a black or white question. It's no left, right. There's no easy answer here. We want an easy answer, but we're dealing with the most complex air sign. No easy answer. And so there's this existential questions coming up really hard in the spring. And we're getting a taste of it. Pluto will retrograde, but this energy of Pluto entering Aquarius is really a new initiation because we're also experiencing the beginning of the age of Aquarius. And so everything is changing. And with the Uranus quality of the sign of Aquarius, sometimes the change is so shocking and surprising, and yet it's everywhere, that you don't realize how profound the change was until it's over, until you look back. And so there's changes already kind of occurring, but especially with this transit. Yes, exactly, it can cause people to lose social skills. Right, and talk about Taurus, reading body language, looking people in the eye. That's a presence that comes from practice. And if you don't have practice, it's not going to come easily, and it makes so much sense, but it's really, really wild. And so it's like Pluto can kind of tempt us all towards extremism. I wouldn't recommend either isolating completely with technology or destroying all of your technological devices and going to live in the forest with a community. We don't need more extremism here. That's not going to help us, especially while Saturn's in Pisces. We need to be finding a middle ground. It's like individuality versus how do you not be swept up in the tide of like where the collective is going. It's very interesting. We have our beautiful eclipses right after all this. Pluto's in Aquarius on March 24th, then we move into eclipse season starting in April. And this is really interesting because we're starting to get Aries, Libra nodes hitting in the eclipses. We haven't had that for a long time. Very, very different energy. It's less about what's going on. It's less about the material substance of like the economy, food distribution, even the technicalities of what's existing, and more about subjective, objective views of it. And so again, I'm going to say just be mindful of the media you consume, because Aries Libra can be very, very opinionated, sometimes to the point of like losing its grasp. But these eclipses kind of initiating the nodes don't technically enter into Aries Libra until later in June, but this is initiating us into that energy, which is very free-spirited, right? North Node in Taurus is kind of, there's something sweet about it, which nobody really feels so much when Uranus has been there the whole time. But North Node in Taurus is really like, oh, this is nice. Okay, I can just take a deep breath and be peaceful. Wow, that's all I'm supposed to be doing. Cool. North Node in Aries is like, oh my gosh, I'm me and I'm supposed to be me. This is great, but it's like, oh my gosh, wow, we're so wound up already. So you put this Aquarius, Aries energy, so North Node in Aries while Pluto's in Aquarius, it's extremism. It wants to just do, and it just wants to keep doing and like, blah, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to do my thing, and very chaotic energy, basically, and very much decisions based on personal rationalizations. But these solar eclipses are bringing, I mean, there's such a pileup up here, right? Jupiter's going to be there. We've got Mercury nearby, Uranus nearby. Chiron is even close. This is about who is you? Who are you? Who I can do better than this. What is your relationship with yourself? But it's not even like a relationship. That's still too like formal. It's like what is the self? What is yourself? And that question is actually so terrifying. Pluto's, by the way, bending the nodes during this eclipse. Whew. Pluto's bending the nodes during this eclipse. Who are you? And how do you want to show up in the world? But like, it might bring you down into the places of like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. And that's not really a fun feeling to have, of course. This is really like a deconstructing of, okay, what's really going on? And it's interesting because with the South Node then in Scorpio, still Pluto squaring, the eclipse season is starting off with the pull of the individual towards basically the pursuit of happiness personally versus this, honestly, weight of the trauma of the past is one way to put it, versus the weight of pressure, the weight of other people needing to tell you something, the weight of persuasion on a large scale around us all the time. But then this desire is lit. There's a flame that's just being lit. A flame is being lit of like, what do I want? What does that mean to me? Now we're getting this individualistic energy of Pluto and Aquarius. Where am I supposed to go with this? What am I supposed to do with this life? And it's inspiring, but there's also this heaviness to it of like, there's a reason why you haven't allowed yourself to ask yourself these questions before. And so it's a heavy one. And I will say this also can very much look, practically speaking, like conflicts, headbutting, right? We got some Aries, the Ram, headbutting between you and loved ones because of your different perspectives of what a good life means or looks like. Which is very sad because of course we can love people, but then if the philosophies are so different that they're not cohesive, or one person or both are trying to get each other to agree with them, then we see a dynamic that's not working. And so there will be a lot of breaking away. This whole spring is about breaking away. People will be breaking away from, communities, even like teams. I can see people like walking away from sports teams that are dysfunctional, like certain toxic family members maybe, breaking away from belief systems, maybe groups they're involved with, anything. But there is like a walking away. But with the South Node Scorpio, with Pluto squaring the nodes, this eclipse, it's not an easy walking away. It's a painful choice that you had to be kind of pushed to make. So leaving those situations. But this is really like all these transits have this signature of like, it's a long and lonely road. Ugh, there's so many like songs that kind of almost fit that. Should we do a spring transit playlist? Oh my God, I could make that so dramatic. I kind of want to do that. But yeah, so this one's going to shake things up, but there's stuff's going to happen with this one globally, economically. Nothing, I'm trying to scare you, affect you. So yeah, if you have 29-degree Aries placements or late degree Aries, even stronger, but anyone with Aries placements, Taurus too, because this 29-degree eclipse is, there's tons of Taurus happening that's conjunct. So very, very interesting. Impulsivity, responses to things. Also, people's rights. Rights are a big one. We've got the two active, which is Scorpio and Aquarius. They're both like, South Node and then Pluto squaring the nodes. There's anger. And it's all about our personal relationship with our anger, but also like, at what point do you need to like just completely uninvolve yourself? Because if people around you are too angry during eclipse season in particular, personally I think it's okay to stay home for a few days if you're surrounded by like just chaos every time you go out. This is like a weird metaphor, but anything that needed like an energetic sledgehammer to like break it open and be like, no, we can't do this anymore, that's gonna happen. Done. Whew. Hard, but it needed to happen. The changes that need to be made. So many people have been on the brink for a while of like leaving their job. And some of them have another one they want to go to. Some of them just know what they want to do. Others don't. But there's this teetering, especially with that topic. And we talk about Aquarius, Pluto, social pressure, control of Scorpio, the hunt for individuality, the quest for it with this Aries and then Taurus, just wanting to feel good, wanting to feel easy in life. Wanting life to feel like it has a positive relationship with you. I think a lot of people quit their jobs, the ones who haven't already. Yes, I think that people's voices will be heard, and I think that the more people remember the ripple effect of your voice, even if it doesn't look like it's being heard now, the energetic effects of you speaking your truth and you just saying it, it matters. It matters so much. And so now is not the time to be silent, even if it looks hopeless. Because everything gets worse before it gets better. And the more it starts to look bleak, it could be the further we're getting towards an edge, a breakthrough. So yeah, the moon now on the south node with Scorpio. And poor Scorpio. By the way, Scorpio placements, if you're watching this, love you. Sorry, I know it's been rough. But like, Capricorn's had like a heroic rough where everyone's like, oh my god. But Scorpio's just getting like kind of just like beat up by some of these transits. Similar kind of energy. We still have Pluto there, still going to be in Aquarius, but now it's retrograde. We're looking back at things. But this one is more of a... The fact that we have the moon in this eclipse on, this is May 5th. So the fact that the moon is trining to Mars in Cancer, which Mars has been making kind of an angsty energy. The whole Gemini transit's been ridiculous, honestly. But this is this is spicy, right? Because Mars is going to be ruling the south node and the moon, traditionally. And then Pluto is squaring the south node. And so this is fiery energy. This is like, do what you can not to snap at people. Because if you do, not to scare you, but just to be real with you, the words that you say when you're snapping at someone during this eclipse are going to stick with you. They're going to have long-term impacts. Eclipses typically are the harbinger of something to come, and they carry on for months, their effects. And so don't yell at people, don't get too upset, but also recognize the anger, because just swallowing it and repressing it, right? South node moon, just like, I'm fine, everything's fine. It's got to go somewhere. You're not making it go away. And that's actually where we become volatile and dangerous, not necessarily literally dangerous, but dangerous to the self in the sense of more likely to accidentally or willingly just be self-detrimental. It could be something as simple as self-sabotage, but anger, it's kind of like, what are those things where you can make spaghetti? Push the Play-Doh into the thing and it comes out as spaghetti. That's what happens when, hi, I love you too. That's what happens when you try to repress your anger. Like, it's gonna come out somewhere. And the spaghetti is so weird, you don't want it to just be coming out all over in different parts of your life. So feel the anger. Honestly, take kickboxing classes. Yes, I'm gonna rent billboards and tell people to take kickboxing in May. You can do, the little things are the big things with this, because it's like that one thing you say out of anger that can like really turn over your life. Like, imagine, snapping at your boss kind of thing. Things that, just don't end well. Spaghetti everywhere. Yeah, Mercury in Cancer. Yes. Honestly, like, rage journal. Just, like, write it down. Like, get your feelings out. Do that thing where you write letters to people that you never send about, like, just, like, spilling, like, your feelings and your anger and, like, how mad you are, and just, like, write it out. Go fast with your messy handwriting. That feels very, like, Mercury in Cancer being crossed by Mars during this transit. But I think that would be a good one. Or, like, make anger art. Yeah, like, paint your feelings. That sounds so silly, but brilliant. We got a lot of water energy, might as well. If your natal Mars is in Cancer, it's okay. You're coming up on a Mars return. There's more fiery energy. This isn't like great or very comforting probably, but it definitely could be worse during this time. This, Mars in Cancer transit's pretty quick. This eclipse might feel a little feisty for you, but it doesn't have to be cataclysmic by any means. It's just take care of the self, check in with the self, go, I don't know, run a mile. Just run a mile every time you're mad. But yeah, no, I feel any Gemini placements too. I talked about Scorpios. If you've had Gemini, well, Mars has just been, okay, I've described Mars as Mars and Gemini during these retrogrades, just hanging out, is like a screaming toddler. It's not dangerous, really. There's nothing like wrong with it. You don't need to make it like stop. It's like a screaming toddler in the distance. But it's annoying and you can't think straight. And it just makes you a little bit more mad because it's just like this screaming all the time and like running in circles. And so it's just been so ridiculous. And Gemini placements have been just getting hit and super anxious because Gemini already can get very wound up. But yeah, this one's been weird. And the road rage, Geminis, vehicles, cars, Mars, anger. Has anyone else noticed that? Because I feel like people are so mad in their cars. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, when people are mad in their cars, it scares me so much. I don't know why. I think actually that makes sense. If you've already left your job and community, then this is really that individuation process. This is like the uncomfortable growing pains of like that weird space when you know like one chapter has ended, but you don't know what the next one is. Kind of like how a progressed new moon feels. You're like, oh, there's space, there's openness, but like that's kind of terrifying. What do I do with this? Like, it's weird, it's uncomfortable, and it's that kind of middle point of like, what now? Even though the seeds have already been planted, you don't have to, start from scratch and envision a whole new plan, but it might feel like you do because you might be like, oh, really listen to those insights. Eclipses can bring in great insights. I know a lot of times people see them as very scary. They can have hard events come, but personally, I've had it. I've talked to so many people who have had it where an eclipse comes and you get it. You're like, that's what I'm gonna do. And then everything's different in a good way because you're like, well, now that I know what I couldn't figure out for myself before, I can't unknow, so I might as well go for it. I might as well do it. And so eclipses can bring in those ideas too. And this is important to mention because of the fact that Mercury is here in between the sun on this lunar eclipse, the Scorpio eclipse, May 5th. Mercury is in between the sun and the North Node in Taurus. And so this is vision, ideas, practical ideas. But fixed Earth, you're going to have to work for them. But ideas, that's so exciting. Uranus is with the sun. It's literally like a little light bulb. It's so fun. But listen to them. Write those down. Write down the ideas you have. Always, but especially this spring. So also, I just want to say, if you find yourself just wanting to like be alone more and spend more time like with yourself, totally fine. Let the circle get a little smaller. We don't want to leak out. Saturn and Pisces, we don't want your energy leaking out, and it always leaks out in one way or another, but this is really like, okay, well, how can I make an energetic container for myself? Not by being like, oh, everybody stay out. It's not, again, it's not black and white. It's not yes people or no people. It's like which people and when. And it's okay to, just because you feel drained, Saturn and Pisces, just because you feel drained is a good enough reason to stay home. You don't need more than that, really. Jupiter entering Taurus right before the North Lunar Node, because it's always moving backwards, before it goes in. It's kind of like Jupiter, who's all like, yeah, everything's awesome, woo. And then the North Node's like, yeah, what do we want out of life? They're like passing each other in Taurus, and they're like, yeah, we're feeling good, we're vibing. And they just like give each other a little kiss, or like the little kiss on the cheek. And then they like keep going. And it's actually really adorable, and I feel like this transit is, I've seen it talked about a lot less than some of the other ones, but to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is our opportunity. Like all this heavy stuff I just talked about, this is so cute, but like so pure. There's something like so genuine, authentic about this. It's like, your favorite pair of jeans. Comforting, but it's also like, yeah, but I can, go out and do my stuff in this. Like, I feel good. There's some ease here. And so specifically if you have Taurus placements, but anyone, Taurus is a sign of wealth, abundance, comfort, relaxation, luxury, but also just peace and silence and solitude and just being okay in presence, being here. If there's something you want that you need to ask for, even in the sense of like applying for a job, technically it's a question, right? If there's something like that you need to go for, catch this Jupiter North Node conjunction. Jupiter at the critical degree of Taurus, conjunct the North Node. about to pass it mid-May through, actually May 31st is when they technically meet, but middle through end of May, really beautiful. It's like a grace period. It's a great time to like catch your breath at like the first, if this spring has you exhausted, go lay in a field of flowers for a second, but also metaphorically, and ask for things that you want. It's like, you know that phrase, I feel like this transit is that phrase, you don't get what you don't ask for. Ask. Submit the job application. Do the thing, you know? Ask your roommate if, I don't know, next time you redo the lease, you get the bigger bedroom. Something like that, right? Ask. Taurus placements, who are just already awesome, are really gonna be like, feeling good. And also, Taurus placements, I'm telling everybody, like, ask for what you want. They're not gonna really have to ask. This is like opportunity knocking at the door for Tauruses. Try not to accumulate too much stuff. Like, literally. Get rid of the stuff that you don't need. Be careful with the online shopping. Be careful with the shopping sprees. Because they're going to be tempting. Everybody. Like, I need to make a note to myself. Like, don't do that. But watch for the materialistic reaching and instead try, if you can remember, to reach for peace. That's so silly, but just keep that in your head. I don't need stuff. I don't need this. I don't need that. I need peace. Oh, I can find peace right now. And then you're like, cool, now I feel Jupiter North Node. This is great. It's right there. It's just that there can be some of these energies that are cohabitating with the ingress of Jupiter into Taurus and the North Node there can have us feeling like, oh, I've been lacking for so long, let me grab now. And we don't want more stuff. We don't want more heaviness. We've got enough with Saturn and Pisces. We don't need physical, tangible things or even like concept. You know, you don't need to buy, I think people can buy like stars. You don't need to buy stars either. You don't need to buy stuff or accumulate. When you bring something into your home, you're inviting the energy of that to live with you. I'm not being dramatic. Everything's energy. And so just think about that. Less stuff, but things that feel better energetically. Marie Kondo. That's what we got to do. This is kind of my advice for this spring. You know, we have, okay, Saturn enters Pisces, Pluto enters Aquarius, eclipse, Jupiter enters Taurus, Jupiter conjunct North Node. Technically, Pluto retrogrades back in Capricorn June 12th. Yeah, and finally we're in Cancer season. But really, things are going to happen. You don't have to do them. You can if you want. But I would kind of sit back and just notice things happen because they're going to happen. And a lot of us are going to be like, we got even this Aries of like, okay, but I need to make it happen. Well, yeah, but do you need to do it right now? Because sometimes that impulsive instinct still got the Scorpio pulling from the South Node, ruled by that Pluto. Sometimes the impulsive behavior isn't like excitement. It looks like excitement, but it's a desire to, once you have any idea, cling to that sudden change, burn down the rest. It can be an escapist thing. And as we know, with Saturn and Pisces, we're trying not to do escapist things, which is easier said than done. But yeah, I would really say just like let things happen because they're going to happen in the world, individually, and also in your inner world. It's a great time to really explore that and make art. Yeah, but thank you for being here. Happy spring, happy transits. So much love and take care.